We're locked in from the Flourish Academy. This is episode 483. It's Saturday. We're talking about weddings, and I'm actually headed to a wedding here very shortly as a guest today. And actually, I don't think there's my camera. I don't think I'm going to take my camera with me. I think I'm just going to be present and let the photographer do their job. So that's what we're talking about, because a friend of mine asked me recently, how do you handle it when you are at a wedding, you set everything up, and guests start coming in and taking photos, like they're standing all around you or they're following you around the whole day? How do you handle that? So typically we refer to those people as Uncle Bob, and I love Uncle Bob. And here's the thing, guests are going to bring cameras to weddings. That's what they do. So they're used to a lot of photographers being a little bit unkind and short with them, and I want to be the exact opposite. So I always welcome Uncle Bob into the scene. In fact, if there is someone, a guest, that is taking photos of my setup, I will get my photo, I will step aside, and I'll say, hey, why don't you stand here? You'll get a better angle. And while you're at it, why don't you give me your camera and you get in the photo and I'll take a shot with your camera. Now, why would I do that? Well, my pricing is structured such that I am a front-loaded photographer. I make all of my money up front. So I am not dependent on back-end orders or sales in order to make my money. If you are a backloaded photographer and you are dependent on those sales, I can see where you would maybe feel a little bit differently about offering to take photos or allowing people to take photos of your setup. So that's one thing. Okay, but the person that was talking to me about this particular situation, it goes a little bit beyond that. So she was photographing a wedding, and there was a photographer with professional gear photographing her setups, which again, at this point, I would welcome that in. I wouldn't have any problem with that. But then the photographer took those photos and posted them all over her Facebook page. And I didn't ask this question, but I'm not sure if that guest made it clear that she was not the paid or hired professional at that wedding. Okay, that to me crosses ethical boundaries. In other words, not cool. If she was posting photos of those setups and not saying that she was a guest or she was following the professional around or anything like that, then she's leaving it up to the viewers to assume that maybe that was her wedding and maybe that was her client, even if it wasn't. Okay, so at that point, that is just not an appropriate thing to do. But here's the thing. If you are at a wedding and you're photographing and people are wishing to take photos of your setup, you don't know if it's an Uncle Bob or if it's an aspiring professional that is going to use your photos in order to grow their business. You don't know that. Therefore, you have to treat everyone respectfully and you have to be kind and invite them to take photos. It is a wedding. I would never in a million years deny anyone the ability to take photos, even if it was my setup, my pose, whatever. Okay. But when you run into this situation where after the wedding, a person has crossed an ethical boundary by posting on their Facebook page or making it seem like that was possibly their client. Okay, in that case, I think an email or a phone call would be appropriate to that person to say, hey, your photos look great, but could you just make note that I was the professional photographer or that you were a guest? And you can say this in a very light, professional manner. It's not about scarcity at this point, and it's not about telling someone they can't take photos. It's about teaching someone how to be respectful of the professional photographer and how to make sure you're not misrepresenting yourself to future clients. What if a future potential client looks at those images, looks at that wedding and thinks, oh, that photographer is really good. Look at her setups or look at the venue she shoots at or how she does it or the types of clients she gets, when the reality was that wasn't the case at all. So that's where my concern is. And that's why I would reach out very kindly and professionally and say, hey, can you just make note that those aren't your clients and that you were a guest. I think that was just really a not cool thing to do. And somebody just might not realize that that's unprofessional. But in terms of how I conduct myself at the wedding, Uncle Bob, Debbie Digital, whatever it is, I welcome them in. I let them take photos because I want them to remember me as being different, as being exceptional. Oh, that photographer was so nice. She even took photos on my camera. They will remember you for your kindness. And if after the wedding something like this happens, then you can address it at that point. But I would just recommend that when you're at a wedding and you're shooting, just be happy, be positive, upbeat, and light. They just want to take photos. And nobody is really thinking about that. We all worry like, oh, they're trying to steal from me my creativity. No, nobody cares about you. Nobody's thinking about you. They're only thinking about themselves, and they know the bride and groom, and they're thinking, oh, pretty photo. I want to take it. Let the guests take photos, invite it, be happy, and then if there's something weird, deal with it then. I'll see you in the next video.